When I was little, I remember hearing the story of David for the first time. I loved hearing about David and Goliath's story, but I did not really like the part where David messes up so many times. I thought then that I was a good kid, unlike David, and that I knew who God was. He was a God who wasn't really personal to me, but who would still give me good things. Every time I made a mistake, like not listening to my parents or getting angry, I always hoped that I would be able to stop making mistakes when I grew older. However, the harder I tried, the more I saw that I wasn't able to. Then I started to understand more about God's holiness. I understood that God is perfect, and so he gets angry at those who disobey him and do bad things. I definitely did not always follow God. I started to wonder if I really was God's daughter. I always heard that God loved me, and I believed it, but I slowly started to see that I was not someone who was good and someone who deserved love. The punishment for not following God is death, which is being separated from Him forever. I felt myself spiraling towards this end. Every time I messed up by speaking mean words, not listening to my parents, or hurting someone with some mean thoughts, I felt less and less confident in my own way of becoming good, and more sure that I would never change and so would never be loved by God. I felt for the first time as if there was no chance for me to ever get better. I cried and asked God if I would ever be someone who He could love. Then everything changed when I started looking at the stories from the Bible in a new perspective. I knew that I had betrayed God just as David had, and David's words from one of his Psalms spoke to me deeply. Psalm 32 says, "For when I kept silent, my bones wasted away through my groaning all day long. For day and night your hand was heavy upon me. My strength was dried up as by the heat of summer." That's exactly how I felt when I messed up. I felt hopeless and tired. Then the psalm changes. "I acknowledged my sin to you, and I did not cover my iniquity. I said, I will confess my transgressions to the Lord, and you forgave the iniquity of my sin." Wow. I saw that if God could forgive David, who was just like me, then that God could forgive me too. I felt hopeful that maybe there was a chance for God to love me. I am like David, and God loved David even after David messed up. And God even ended up calling David a man after God's own heart. How? Because when God saw how hopeless David was, and I am, he chose to see every part of me that I wanted to disappear and take those terrible things upon himself. He saw my sin, and instead of leaving me in it, he sent his son to die for me. Now, when God loves me, he looks at his son, who he crucified, and looks at his terrible death on the cross, which shows just how terrible I am, and yet how amazing God's love is, and that is what makes me worthy as his daughter. My whole life now is changed. I started reading my Bible more because I wanted to love God and just love him as he loved me. I started praying more and doing everything that I did, from schoolwork to spending time with friends to anything in between with prayer, because I knew I needed God. I experienced a change in my relationship with my parents as well. Also, I started to find more ways to learn more about God, be involved in a community of friends who love God deeply, and find ways to help people, and even tell people about God because I wanted everyone to know that they can be loved as I am. I went to Bishop, a Native American reservation, and worked in East Palo Alto as God planted a desire in my heart to show love to others, especially kids, and share His truth with them. When I struggle in anything in my life, my first response is to turn towards God. And when I look towards my future, I do not look towards money or fame, but instead I look towards God's plan for His kingdom and how I can be a part of His plan. I hope that you all can be amazed by God's love, just as I am, and can run back to Him all the time, even when you mess up, and find that His love transforms us all. I no longer think that I can ever make it to God on my own, but I rejoice knowing that God still loves me, and that humbles me daily. We are His beloved children, and He loves us, especially when we do not deserve it. Thank you.